on YouTube. It says we're live. Now let's do the Brady Bunch thing here. I like that better. There. If you click on gallery view, you get to see the.
I gotta go on YouTube now.
Yeah.
What is the address for YouTube though? Which one would it be? Is it on your channel?
Which one? Oh, on YouTube.
Yeah.
Let me see. It's on the Wow Signal podcast.
Okay.
YouTube channel, and there should be a here. I'll post something in the. Let's see, stream URL.
I just wanted to check.
Is that correct? It doesn't look. It looks almost too generic to be the right one. I'll put it in the chat, and you can see what you can do with it.
Okay. It should be V equals and then a number. I mean, not a number. Mixed alphanumeric.
Well, it's just that. It doesn't. It doesn't look like it. That's right.
Yeah, it's weird. That's a weird address.
Yeah.
That's a very weird address.
Hold on. Let me see.
That's not in the right protocol. What is that?
It is going out.
RTMP. What protocol is that one?
I don't know. But there's no there should be like a long string of stuff.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but
analytic. No, Stream Health.
Where are you? I can find your
Stream Health is excellent. Here it is. I need to click this share button. That's what I need. Okay, I'm going to copy that. Now try. Yeah. Now try. I got to be on Zoom. Okay, try. The problem with OBS and Zoom, you should have them on separate monitors because they look very similar. You have one that's mirroring the other one, so it can easily get confused. Okay, that's it. Oh, here it is. I need to click this share button. Okay, now I can hear myself. That's me on the YouTube channel. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear it a few seconds delayed also.
Yeah, it should be some delay.
Okay, so can you hear me? So in YouTube, you appear with in a little window.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, what I'm doing, I probably don't need that for this kind of context. I've got my little window here. This is just my webcam.
Okay.
And I can just
quite a bit.
I can just
quite a bit delayed though.
Get rid of it like that. See. Okay. Now it's gone.
Yeah, it's kind of delayed. Delayed by, for me anyway. It's kind of delayed by a considerable amount of time.
Now I've got OBS. I've got Zoom. Now I'm trying to figure out how to add text or something so I can. And I haven't figured out all the lovely little bits of. There is image. You can add an image. Or even an image slideshow.
Cat on the screen.
It's delayed by about a minute I'd say about a minute for me. Delay.
A minute, really?
Yes.
Well, okay.
Yeah. I'm comparing. So, yeah, about a minute.
The problem is if you're doing Q&A, that's too much delay.
Well, I mean, yeah, I know what you mean.
You'd like it to be. I mean, 10 seconds is fine. I would.
No, for me, it's literally about a minute delay because I've been keeping an eye on it. I mean, when we do something right here on live on Zoom, and then I'm looking at when that happens on the YouTube screen for me.
I'm getting excellent stream health according to YouTube Studio, and that's the most recent update, which was 5 minutes ago. I mean, and I've got 2 concurrent viewers. I know Chiro's one. I guess Nick's the other one.
Yeah, I'm the one.
Yeah, I'm watching.
Yeah,
so, just us.
I've got three computers here. I watch myself actually, but one of them's my work laptop, which I don't like to mess around.
I wonder if my delay is it's me, just for me, that I have.
No. I've got a delay that's around a minute too. I didn't time it.
Okay.
Oh, really? Well, okay. Tell you what.
Yeah.
I'll.
You have to keep that in mind.
I'm going to put something on my webcam that'll. Stop that. Okay.
Yeah.
I got to do it to zoom. Okay. There. Well, it's backwards. Yeah. It's mirror image, but it's 9:29 right now.
Yeah.
Now when you see that,
oh yeah, it's gonna be probably, but for me it was about a minute, give or take.
I wish these things weren't. Now, interestingly, Nick, the sign behind you does not mirror image. I don't. You must have a better webcam.
Well, actually, I can see. When you held your phone up, it was in the correct order for me.
Oh, really? But for me, it looks mirror image.
It was at 21:29. Okay, yeah. Now, okay, my delay now was about 30 seconds because I just saw you hold up your phone. Yeah, 21:29. And this interesting, and in YouTube, it's mirror image, but when I look at you through Zoom, it's a right way.
Okay, so. But for me, when I look at my own webcam view, it's mirror image.
I'm mirrored. I
and also Chiro's T-shirt is not mirror image. So
yeah, I see that too. Yeah, it is.
I am mirrored, but Nick is not mirrored for me.
Yeah, that's weird. Like your own thing is mirrored, but on the way out, Zoom flips it.
I know there's a way to change that somewhere. I don't know where. I don't remember where.
I don't know how. I haven't seen it in any of the preferences.
Yeah, right here. Going to video settings, running Zoom, and there's a mirror my video, a checkbox.
Oh, what if I turn that off? What happens? Okay.
I just changed mine.
Let's see
what happens.
Oh, yeah, awesome. Now is it mirrored for you?
You got it.
It's correct for me.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Looks right now.
Why is that even an option? Why would you want the mirror image of your own video?
But you reversed in YouTube, though. You reversed in YouTube. In YouTube, you still reverse. Oh, wait. That's the old image. wait, that's the old image. I gotta wait for it. Okay, there you go. Okay.
I don't have any graphics on my T-shirt.
You look right now. A
gravy stain, but not a.
You're right now.
Well, so how are you guys doing? I imagine the trucking business is doing okay right now.
It's my particular segment of the industry is designated, like most trucking, essential critical infrastructure. So essentially nothing has changed except there's much less traffic on the road. So I'm in my office now, and I drive to the office every day, and the highways are almost empty. Every once in a while you find a cluster of traffic. Most of the time it's like night and day. I mean, before the shutdown, it took a long time to get anywhere. Now you just drive wherever you want to go, and you don't even have to think about traffic.
Yeah.
So,
well, I got my car repaired this week, and I went to pick it up. The tow truck dropped it off, but I went to pick it up, and they were pretty They were pretty full and pretty busy in there. They all had not all of them. Most of them had masks, and come Monday, everybody's supposed to have a mask. And my wife gave me an improvised mask to wear in there, which I'm sure it looked like I was about to rob the place. But they all, some of them, the people that are dealing with customers are wearing gloves, and but there was a lot of people in there, and I think they had all the mechanics on duty, and because my car required major repairs, major repairs. This is called having a teenage daughter. But
by the way, just as a word of warning, be careful because you got the chat window open that's visible in YouTube. So don't write anything that you don't want the people to see.
Oh, the chat window's visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I won't write.
Just warning you.
I won't write my bank account number in there. Oh, I didn't know it was visible. Right. Let me have a look at OBS. Yeah, oh, yes, it certainly is. No, I can take it. I can take it out what is it? It's command.
It can be real useful for streaming sessions. We're actually taking questions from the audience and people.
Yes, it could. Now right now I just cropped it out. And now I'm gonna put it back. I actually think it is. the thing is the audience won't be typing in this chat window necessarily. They will be typing in the YouTube
on the
chat
YouTube
window.
chat. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, if you want to go ahead and privately talk to the panelists, you don't want necessarily the audience to see. There might be some things you don't want the audience to see.
No, yeah.
Yeah, might be, but for the most part, no. It'd be boring, but it wouldn't be a violation of anyone's privacy. But
well, it depends on the nature of your podcast. If you're saying, get rid of this jerk, maybe you want to be nice and not say it out loud. I don't know.
Right, exactly.
Well, I mean, you don't have to say that out loud. All you have to do is just go to participants and eject. There's been something called Zoom bombing lately.
Oh yeah.
Some of these bored teenagers are going around to Zoom meetings and getting admitted into the meeting and then displaying their penises or whatever, to avoid that, you have to. What I do now is I have by default, everybody has to be admitted by the host, and if I don't know who they are, I'm gonna say, okay, I'd welcome you in here, but I don't know who you are. Can you maybe send me a quick, send me your real name, whatever.
Who goes there?
Yeah. Now, you know what? Oh, by the way, this tonight, just like an hour ago, Patrick called me up on. Remember Patrick?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, Patrick Festa. Right?
He called me up on Hangouts. He said he'd been off the internet for a year.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And I think this is both of his parents died like in the last year and a half. And,
I'm sorry to hear that, but he was always taking care of his father when we were on.
And I think his house has been. He didn't say whether he sold it or whatever, but he said I'm not supposed to be in this house. I think it was his parents' house. I'm not sure.
That's funny that you mention because this morning also coincidentally I got you probably saw that. Well, I don't know if you did or not, but on Discord. Adam, you remember Adam Smith?
Adam Smith, sure. Yeah,
from England,
Adam
right?
Synergy, yeah.
Yes, yeah. He just contacted. He wrote on the general channel on in Discord.
Oh, I was wondering what happened to him.
And he's like, we chat briefly, and I told him that we were having this Zoom. Of course, he's in England, as you might remember.
Yeah,
so
in Grimsby.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's I miss Adam. I liked him. It's been tricky down. I come down here to the pod cave in the morning at 9:00, and it's time to start work. It's really difficult to think work.
Yeah.
But what I've done is I bought a new monitor, and I put it up next to this one, and it's connected to my work laptop. So I actually moved the chair over.
Right.
To sit there. So it psychologically I'm at work. I move the chair back here. I'm not at work.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly what I do. I got my workstation. I got one of those foldable tables. The longer ones, foldable. And I put them in a corner of this room on the other side. And I got this chair and I, just swivel, just go over and come back to this personal.
And my wife's also teleworking, so she has go in her little private space. I come down here to the pod cave, and my kids are both home.
Yeah,
and they're bored out of their gourds.
Are they doing any kind of remote schooling?
They are trying to do that, but they are feeling their way. They really don't. Nobody really knows how to do it. The professors and teachers are still kind of struggling with how to manage that, but they can't. My son has missed some of his Zoom classroom meetings. I think something about that he doesn't like. Although he does have his private bass lesson every Thursday with his bass teacher,
and that works out just fine.
Yeah, actually it does.
Funny how that goes.
Well, I felt sorry for poor Pepe. He's he's a wonderful teacher and great musician. He's not a wealthy man. I just explain why he's not a wealthy man. He's a musician and a teacher.
Right.
And he's really a fantastic bass player. And Caleb really respects him and admires him. But suddenly he had no income because nobody could come to his house for bass lessons, and he wasn't supposed to go to their house, So I felt really sorry for him. So I emailed him and said, Pepe, do you want to try a virtual lesson with Caleb? Because I've already written in the check for the month of March. And he said, yeah, I'd be happy to give that a try. And there were a lot of glitches at first, but we eventually got it to where they could hear each other well, both the instruments and the voice, and it's working out. And
are they using Zoom as well?
Yeah, we are using Zoom for that. Although we considered using Skype, and I don't know, Zoom has been through a couple updates recently. That were major updates, and hopefully a big improvement. The CEO actually came out and said I screwed up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are worried that about security with Zoom. And
they deceived. Well, they had claimed previously that they were end-to-end encryption, right? But they were not.
Right. Yeah, and they admitted that it wasn't really end-to-end, and it's encrypted between certain 2 points, but it's not encrypted the whole way.
I'm not sure.
In theory, they could spy on you, and transmit your stream to China or whatever they want to do.
Well, and the thing is that my understanding anyway was that you could share. Well, I think that's kind of what you were saying earlier. That if you share, right, if you share a link and you accept that, the person that accepts that invite automatically is broadcasting the information that would allow a malicious agent to get stuff from your Windows machine. I don't know about other operating systems, but I know.
I'm skeptical that. Well, I mean, it's always possible, right? That especially in Windows, which is got all these legacy issues. But I couldn't even get Zoom going on my son's Windows PC. I mean, it runs for me as an admin, but when I go to his account, it won't run. But he's a gamer, so the software, the crap that is on his computer is just, there's so many layers of it. We really need to go wipe his hard drive and start over. The stuff that why are my dogs getting excited? Well, anyway,
the demands of gamers have been one of the primary, along with pornography, have been one of the primary drivers of faster broadband service.
Well, yeah, there are not only a lot of gamers out there. There's a lot of gamers who are streaming their games.
Yes, that's become one of the top. Yeah, that's a really big. There are entire websites devoted to that, like DLive and Twitch and stuff.
Yeah, Twitch is actually pretty interesting site. But if you got a 15-year-old boy, he's basically going to live. That's his life, is right. And we just got it, but we just got him this. It was actually a Christmas present that had been delayed because they weren't available yet. Plus, he put some of his own money in, but we got him this this VR thing from Steam. It's really expensive and really good.
Well, a VR thing? You mean
goggles and controller
and all that?
Yeah, and that's what he does for hours every day. He plays this VR game. And it's immersive, and he loves it. It's the next generation VR. It's really good. I have not played the game yet.
What's the brand of the goggle?
Is it Oculus Rift?
No, it's not Oculus. Oh, what is it? It's I just paid a bunch of money for it. I can't remember what it's called. But
I would have thought a young person who was really into computer gaming would be constantly cleaning and wiping and upgrading their computer so it ran without any hiccups. You don't want any.
You would think, But we have an ADHD teenager who is also, is into a lot of different games. Now he's mostly on the Steam platform, which is kind of nice because it does kind of keep things clean. But every once in a while he'll do something else, and I gave up trying to track what he was doing. We've had this PC for a while now, but we put a new video card in this year, so he could do the VR.
HTC Vive, Vive?
Yeah, the Vive.
Vive.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it's basically, if you don't order it the day that they say we're taking orders, no, it's not the day, the hour, you will not get one.
Wow.
They're that popular.
High demand.
It's like toilet paper, man. You cannot get it unless you show up early.
Let's not start with toilet paper saga now.
my wife went yesterday. My wife showed up at Safeway when they opened the door at 6 o'clock in the morning, and she got a pack of rolls.
I got 8 rolls left.
She was very proud of herself.
That's all.
I scored some rolls.
I got 8 rolls, and I got to make them last, man.
And what the guy stocking it said he was putting it out gradually.
Yeah.
Over the course of the day, he wasn't going to put it all out at once, because he didn't want just the early birds to get all of it.
Did you stockpile? Did you guys stockpile? I didn't stockpile.
No, we didn't stockpile anything. There was no indication that anything that paper production was going to stop.
Right.
It hasn't stopped. The paper production hasn't stopped.
It hasn't stopped. That's not what the problem is.
Right?
Or hand sanitizer, or pasta, or whatever.
It's just
some of the things that are
the manufacturers know that the market is going to get saturated. So rather than cranking up their factories and run full blast, they're just continuing to operate at the ordinary rate, because eventually the shelves are going to fill up again, and then they're not going to sell anything for months at a time.
Exactly. Yeah. Bingo. That's exactly what they're doing. So that's why we never find them on the shelf yet. Because
I mean, the only thing that should govern, the only variable that should govern the amount of toilet paper needed is population size. Or if a stomach bug is coming through, it might spike up a little bit. But this is not a stomach bug.
Well, they got the whole issue with the supply chain, which Nick might be familiar with the fact that they have two completely separate production of toilet paper, one for industrial, institutions, right,
Yeah.
and one for residential, and that's completely two different supply chains, completely different.
Yeah, well, the ones you see in the institutional room water closets are great big rolls,
Right.
like a foot wide. And
you get those at janitorial supply houses. I have some of that at my office.
Exactly. So but apparently it's not as straightforward as it would appear to convert. You know what I mean? To kind of shift the load, right?
Yeah. If your machines are set up to produce rolls of toilet paper like that, you can't just snap your fingers and have them produce 4 little rolls and put them in plastic. And sell them
the profit margins are so low, they're not going to invest a lot of money in 21st century flexible manufacturing technology.
Yeah, there's no motivation to make a high tech, highly flexible manufacturing. Facility.
I've been following what Tesla's up to, and they're like cutting edge. We can reconfigure our factory in a day to produce something different. But they have a 30% margin on their cars. They can afford the investment and that includes their R&D. They can afford the investment to develop the factory, and they'll pour billions into a factory, and it'll be worth the money. But people that make commodity products don't have that kind of. I mean, they're running on thin margins. And
I've been reading about the history of steam engines, and that a lot of, we think of the big steam locomotives of like a 19th century thing, but actually the biggest steam locomotives were made in the 20th century. But anyway, the reason I bring this up now is because I was reading about a steam engine that was used in an industrial application in England, and it went into service in 1884 and it operated until 1981.
Wow. Man.
So, and there are a lot of examples like that. So the very biggest steam engines and the big applications of internal combustion engines, those things, if they're properly maintained and you don't have to change your factory around, you can run them 100 years.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's not much technological change in the industry that are doing things like that.
Yeah. It's with
toilet paper situation.
I really I as much suffering as it involves, I prefer to live in interesting times.
I'm very lucky because number one, I used to work from home for 6 years.
Yeah.
So I know how to work from home. Some of my coworkers they feel like, I don't know, the fish out of the water, fishes out of the water.
I have questions for you, Chair. I know you're working down at Kennedy, right?
Well, I work in the same vicinity. Okay.
But you're involved with the ground software for.
I'm involved with the range systems software.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you have any scuttlebutt about what's going on with this upcoming DM2 SpaceX launched the space station. Are you guys working on that?
No, we really, honestly, we work on software that supports the range, which is the 4050 Space Wing, which is U.S. Air Force.
Right. Well, yeah, but but so you're not like in the operational loop. You're more offline.
No, we basically we have systems that assist the monitoring of launches, right? From the perspective of the countdown and all the we have subsystems.
Well, I've actually done some of. Well, I haven't built any of that stuff, but I've been at ranges and done countdowns. So
yes.
But I'm the spacecraft expert, so I sit there and look at the screens. But
but our software it's support software, so we have launchpad analysts, right?
Yeah.
That sits on console and we have software that they utilize to track anomalies.
Yeah.
In what area, right?
Right. So we'll hear range is green, and that means you guys have done your job.
Pretty much.
And all the boats are gone, and all the.
Well, I mean, if the range is not green, and then we need to explain why it's not green. No, there's a lot of stuff.
If the range is not green, we don't know why it's not green and when it's going to get green, right? And we want to know that. We want to know that immediately.
Well, there's a whole lot of moving parts. Let me put it this way: human going to sites, right? We have radar sites. We have video camera sites.
You got planes.
All kind of systems.
Yeah. Huh? Planes that are out checking the water for boats.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We got the weather balloons, launching weather balloons several times. We got the choppers. Yeah. We got all kind of resource assets.
The weather guy is the one who gets the most heat though, because he's like, that thunderstorm will be out of here in 35 minutes, and when it's 36 minutes, what's wrong with our weather guy?
Yeah. Well, those are the more high profile. I guess.
Yeah.
There's other systems that control.
You have the lightning monitoring system in your.
Yes.
Yeah. Lightning detectors. System.
Yes, they got an entire group dedicated to that stuff, and then they got the camera people, and they got the audio. They got audio resources. They got radar. What else? Telemetry. Command destruct. There's different systems, right?
Yeah, I remember when we were at Goddard, when we were just working normally, not a launch site, obviously.
Right.
If there's a lightning strike within 20 miles,
Yeah.
we take notice of. If it's within 15 miles, we shut down.
They got cloud rules.
You can't risk
know.
$1 billion just because you wanted to start a half an hour earlier.
Yeah, they got wind rules. They got cloud rules. You know that stuff, right? I mean, it's not. It's public stuff. I mean, stuff that is known. The range is one of the primary. I don't want to. It's one of the primary entities, I guess, that drives whether or not a launch is going to occur. You hear during the launch, range is green or range.
Well, that's just basically one data point. Range is green or range
one
is
data point.
Or range is red.
Wait, that's why. See, that's the thing, though. That's each one of those data points. They have so many sub.
There's a ton of work goes in getting those data points right.
We got our own. We got our own poll, right? Yeah. We got the poll that we do. That is not even. You don't even see that. In other words, with the result of our poll congregates into the communicator, the communicating person. Yeah. I don't remember the exact name of the role, but you know what I'm talking about. The person that basically says the range, range is good to go, or whatever he says. But before he can say that, we have our own systems calls, constantly monitoring.
You have a checklist, and the spokesperson the spokesperson only gives the result.
Right, exactly. Before you can say the range is green, we need to know that everything is green. All the subsystems, well, actually they're called super systems. We got super systems and we got the systems. Super systems, we got like about 10 of them, and then each of the super systems has what we refer to as subsystems or whatever. So it's a pretty complex, complex machinery, if you want. But that's fascinating. It's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can get Patrick online.
Sort of like a supply chain. You've got a lot of things going on that everything has to go right for everything to click and come together. And if it doesn't come together, things don't happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm by the way, I'm working on James Webb Space Telescope now.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
How's that going?
What's the estimated launch date of the James Webb?
Well, officially it's still March 21.
Next year?
Yeah. Whether we make that or not is pretty risky, but the work because we kind of slowed to a crawl. Those of us who do the kind of data analysis and paperwork, we can keep doing our thing, but although we're kind of limited by working at home, teleworking, but the guys out in California who have the observatory there, they've slowed to a crawl, and they're probably at least a month delayed, probably more than that. So they have now. Fortunately, it's a very big observatory, so you don't have to get all that close to each other to work on it. So they'll have like one team, like one guy on one side of it and one guy on the other side, and they're well more than 2 meters away from each other. And of course, they're in bunny suits anyway, so they're pretty well protected. And because it's a clean room, and so they are making slow progress, but they could go a lot faster if they could get more people in the room, and they're not doing that. So
it's one of those things you cannot do remote, right? You have to be there.
Yeah, you have to be physically present. But now, the management teams and the engineering teams are using telepresence and conferencing, and they are making slow progress. So I think we might. It's not unrealistic we will get off in the spring of late spring, early summer of next year. There's no real launch window we have to hit.
Except that the workload that's waiting for that telescope to be active. Almost every cosmology you read, in the final paragraph, they'll say, when the James Webb Space Telescope is operational, then we'll be able to get this data.
Yeah,
so
well, it's gonna take months from launch to get operational.
Right.
Several months.
There's a backlog.
It takes a month just to get out there.
Right.
And then.
But when it gets operational, every year you lose is another backlog of observations people want to make.
Yeah, well, the people I feel sorry for are the graduate students who are trying to get their thesis work done, and they're the ones who are dependent on JWST are going to be delayed.
SOL. They are SOL.
They'll pick some other. They have to pick another project because they're not going to. Some of them, are not going to get their data when they wanted it. But that's been the case for several years now. So, it keeps getting pushed off. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
For a long time they said 2018, and now we look back at that and say, what a joke, But the truth, the good news is that the issues that are in front of us are all very solvable. So we should be. I think next year is definitely doable.
I hope you're right.
And of course, now it hasn't been through it's been through some of its testing program, not all of it yet. There is a possibility that somewhere in that testing campaign some failure could happen.
There's always even Hubble wasn't right the first time it was sent up. And operational.
We don't really. There's not really there's kind of a servicing concept for JWST, but there's no servicing plan. So
right. It's out at one of the Lagrange points.
If it gets up there and it doesn't function properly, it's not going to function properly probably ever.
Well, eventually, decades hence, somebody would go up there and fix it. It's just, like you said, no plan for maintenance, but there is a concept for maintenance.
The main concern I have is it is so complicated. Now, engineers have been crawling all over the design for years. They've looked at every possibility but it is just getting it up there and getting it opened up and ready to operate involves hundreds and hundreds of activities, all of which have to go right. So it's a little scary. And now the good news is that some of the smartest people in the business are on it and are looking at it hard. So they're, all the stuff that's scary has had a very, very hard look and a lot of testing and a lot of simulation. And it doesn't mean you can't get it wrong. It just means that, it's a really good effort. So I think that, I'm kind of cautiously optimistic it's all going to go well. But there's so many steps along the way that have to be perfect. Not perfect, but, have to be correct.
Nearly perfect. Yeah.
How many months do you think it's going to end up sleeping beyond
probably about 2, assuming this pandemic issue gets resolved on time.
Is it going to cause any kind of trajectory issues by
No,
launching?
not really.
No.
Ariane Space can launch anytime we want them to. They have to make some changes, but pardon?
It's going to go up on an Ariane rocket.
Ariane 5, yeah.
Yes.
It's going to be, yeah.
French
when they designed this back in like 2008, that was the only rocket that could handle it. That they knew was going to be available, and the shuttle could handle it, but the shuttle does not. They knew they were going to retire that, so it didn't make any sense to go in the shuttle.
Right, they had to take the hardware they had to design it around the hardware that was available and known to be available. I understand.
Yeah, and let me tell you, I've been working on it for about 2 months now. It is an incredibly complex piece of machine. It is, and not only the requirements are so hard to hit. It's got to be extremely cold on one side and the sun shining on the other side. And by extremely cold, I mean there is one part of the focal point where they want it to be 7 degrees Kelvin, 7 degrees above absolute zero. That's damn cold. And there's a whole lot of electronics on, not very, just a meter or two away. That's they worry about milliwatts of power being dissipated in the vicinity of that. That's how seriously concerned they are about getting it that cold. What's
the main power source? A radiothermal generator, or
no? It's a solar array, but it's on the other side of the sun shield. So there's this 5-layer sun shield, which is huge.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of that.
It's the size of a tennis court, as they say, and each layer is extremely thin, but there are 5 of them, and the idea is that each one knocks a little more solar radiation back. And eventually on their side, it's pretty cold, but it's still not cold enough for the longer wave infrared that they want to detect. And there's an instrument called MIRI, which requires extremely cold temperatures or it won't meet its science objectives. And because they want to look at, not only do they want to look at very mid-infrared, which is, right in the sweet spot of where all the black body radiation is from the sun and the earth and everything. It's also they want to look at very, very faint objects, so they have to have low noise, and that means that there's going to be it's going to be super cold, and so the system that makes it that cold is very, very complicated, and there's all kinds of things that can go wrong. And the telescope itself is extremely impressive. It's these multiple hexagonal mirrors that each one of which can be oriented and moved separately. And so they're going to go up there and take a long time to get the wavefront perfect. And
all the comparisons. I'm looking at while you were explaining this, Paul. I was looking at the Wikipedia page about the James Webb Telescope, and I'm looking at some of the instruments, information, and everything. And there's some of the things are impressive. I was reading, for instance, that the aperture is 6.5 meters, which none of the other space telescopes.
It's a very large mirror.
Yeah, none of them comes close. None of the other space telescopes even comes close to that.
It dwarfs Hubble. But to get a mirror that big on a rocket, you have to fold it. So that's why they broke it up into these hexagonal segments, and they folded. They have basically 2 wings that fold over, and then the secondary mirror folds back behind it. And man, so the whole lot of, and it has to be, not only does it have to be folded, it has to be tight and it has to be strong, because it's going to be, you get shaken and exposed to a lot of noise. And so the engineering is just, there's phenomenal amount of engineering involved in that.
So there's a variety of servo motors that operate independently from each other to orient the mirrors. Is that how it works?
That's right. Yeah, each mirror has its own complicated little mechanism that not only orients it, but can push it back and forth by extremely small amounts. It's just incredible technology, because that's been tested on the ground. It's the Keck telescope out in Hawaii and other telescopes use that kind of technology, but that's in 1G. We've never tested it in space. Yeah. So at least, when I say we, I mean, maybe somebody in the black world has, but in the open world, it's never been tested. And it is an incredibly sophisticated system. And then there's this optical baffle which is this big sort of black thing that sticks out from the mirror that
Okay.
that keeps stray light from coming in. And even though you've got this big sun shield, you shouldn't get a whole lot of stray light. You will get stray light bouncing off the sun shield from stars and planets. But it's in the perfect place for a telescope. It's going to be an L2, which is probably the best place you could ever think about putting a space telescope.
Now, how controllable is it going to be from Earth? Do you know, as far as sending commands?
Oh, it's fine. It's really not very far away. It's only it's a few light seconds away, and everything will be pre-scripted. So just you load up a activity sequence and it executes it, which is the way pretty much everything is done in space, and the so the ops team will have this extremely complex system that's cost hundreds of millions of dollars that will put together these activity sequences. They'll get uploaded, and I think they'll have. See if they have a few hours a day. I think 4 hours a day of contact through DSN at high data rate, and that during that time they will command all those sequences and do anything else they need to do. Plus, there's a low data rate link that's on all the time, and so they'll have it's actually, that's not the hard part by any means. It is a very, very complex system. That's the thing. Just getting it up there and getting it ready to do observations, and it's going to take several months. It takes it a long time just to cool down enough. People don't realize how cold this thing has to be. And there's a near infrared. There's a suite of near infrared instruments. Then there's the mid range infrared, and the near infrared has to be cold, but not as cold as the mid range. So it eventually will cool down, and they can start taking images with that. And then, while the mid range is still getting colder, and then they'll commission the mid range, and that will take the most sensitive science in that mid infrared region, like 25 microns, something like that. Really, really, the longest wavelength that the human eye can see is about 8/10 of a micron, less than a micron. And so this is like much, much longer wavelength than that. Most of the light we see is like 6/10 of a micron, something like that, that our eyes can see. And so part of it is highly redshifted objects that are way, way out there, near the early universe, and also things like extremely cold things like planetary disks that are starting to form around a star. They're very, very cold, but we should be able to get awesome images of those things, depending how close they are, of course. But so, and also spectra, which are really important. And so, yeah, it's going to be a very important science instrument. I hope we can get it all working. My job is a very small part of that, but at least I'm, by learning it, hopefully maybe I can contribute later on. We'll see what happens.
Is it a more or less conventional refrigeration system that's going to cool down the parts to 7 Kelvin, or is it going to be? Is it something?
It has to be helium, which not. But the main problem is that you can't put a cryocooler very close to that instrument because there's so much vibration. So they've decided to put the cooler on the other side of the sun shield and pipe the helium all the way up the telescope mast and into the instrument. It's the amount of engineering involved in that is just mind-boggling, and because what that means is that the pipes have to actually deploy. They have to expand out because the telescope is on this stand. See, and when we get into orbit, they're going to push the telescope up on this mast that extends. It's just crazy. I mean, but and so everything that's communicating between the telescope and the other side of the spacecraft has to also extend, including the helium pipes. And now they've tested this, and it does work. So
the reason I ask about the refrigeration is because a few years ago there was a Herschel Space Telescope. I think that was an ESA project.
Yeah.
It had to be cooled to extremely low levels, but that telescope actually ceased to be functional when it ran out of coolant. So is this a system?
No, the coolant is recycled here. So the helium is recycled. It's not now. In those systems, what they do is they put a dewar in there, and the dewar, and eventually everything would boil off.
Yeah, that's what happened with the Herschel telescope.
Yeah, and it happened with WISE as well, and other infrared telescopes. But here they want a long life. They want 6 years minimum, probably more like 7, 8, 9 years, as many years as they can get. So they're actually gonna cycle the helium through the system and back down to the cooler. That's gonna go back up, which is much more complicated. Say again.
So when you say 6 years minimum, is that an extremely conservative calculation, and it could, like Voyager, operate for 30 years? Or
well, there's a lot of conservatism in the calculations. Yes,
I understand that. But what if you take away the conservatism? How long are we talking about an operational land?
Well,
I don't think
anybody's ever has done the optimistic case.
Well, I'm not going to hold you accountable. I just want your estimate.
Well, I think we could have it up there. Well, the physics of this is really hard to forecast, but I think we could have the mid-range instrument running for 10 years plus. The mid-infrared, the near-infrared instrument could probably run much longer.
Right. Some of the instruments will continue to operate much longer than others.
There's a lot of redundancy, and there's a lot of.
So it's going to be operating for decades, probably in some capacity or another.
My hope is that they can run long enough so we can figure out how to get a servicing mission up there, a servicing robot.
It's not just we know how to get a service up there. You just have to be willing to spend the money to do it.
Well, I mean, the actual development of the servicing activity and the robot and everything it's a lot of money, and it's also
it's non-trivial, but it can be done. It's just a question. If you're willing to spend the money and invest the resources, it can be done.
Yes.
There's no question it can be done.
Yes, it can be done. But there's the design of the thing. It's not designed bottom up for serviceability. So you would have to kind of you would have to design a very complex robot that could
if something catastrophic were to happen, its life would be cut short, basically. If something, hopefully, nothing, but if something were to happen, it would not be serviceable.
Well, it's possible, depending what the failure is, that you might not be able to service it. And that would be, would it be limping along with less capability, or would it be, at some point? Now I should point out, there's no way you're just going to build a copy of James Webb Space Telescope. That just doesn't happen at NASA. They don't clone anything, but the next generation one, assuming you got a really good science return out of the first one, they would not be that motivated to just replace it and keep going. They would want to go to the next thing.
like you said, this was designed in 2008. So designing something even now, the technology is going to be better.
Yeah, it would be. In fact, some of the technology they have is already looking a little bit long in the tooth.
Right.
But that's better than trying to upgrade it because
The
All of the
question
really
is, but the question is the manufacturing technology advancing as fast as the actual technology that we're manufacturing? Because if we're talking about another, no, no, 10, 15 years from conception to to finished products, then
well,
you
you
know,
know, you have to understand to make these things happen, you have to have the science team, the science community buy in. They have to want to do it, and they're always going to want something that's better than what they have now, right? Uh,
right.
and they're smart people, and they are clever, and they're always coming up with better concepts. And so, but the main thing is that we could build better, lighter electronics than we could 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and better, lighter materials, only a little better. So the things that advance, some things advance fast, some things advance slowly, right? Like solar arrays are not getting that much more efficient because they're kind of pushing the limit of how efficient they can get. So they're kind of creeping over 30%, and they're probably never going to get much over 30%. Batteries are getting a lot better. Battery technology has been booming because it's driven by cell phones and electric cars, right? So there's a lot of commercial driver to that. Uh,
Right.
solar panels are getting better and cheaper, but they're not getting more efficient. In space, all you care about really is how many watts per square meter you can get, right? Or watts per kilogram. You don't really care about, watts per dollar. And the but batteries are getting better. Electronics is getting better. Optics, optics technology these days is extremely sophisticated, and I don't know if we probably have all the low-hanging fruit picked on the optics. Uh, there may not be much more we can do, with mirrors and things like that. The mirror on
well
JWST is
the
incredibly sophisticated.
but the what's being learned in the past few years in terms of mirror technologies is all the big ground-based telescopes that are being designed and built now are being built with these complex mirrors, each with a lot of little things that are individually adjusted, and that technology has also advanced rapidly just in the past 10 years.
Yeah, and they are building massive new telescopes that are going to be. There's really no point in sending an optical telescope up in space just to be a big light bucket because they've got that problem solved on the ground. Uh, and James Webb is certainly not doing that, right? James Webb is smaller than the Keck telescope, so it and can't be as big a light bucket. Uh, the reason you want to get now these days, the only reason you really want to get a telescope above the Earth's atmosphere is to see an infrared, which is you could build a 40-meter ground-based telescope, it still couldn't get any infrared. So it's that infrared visibility that is extremely important scientifically, and that's why you're doing James Webb and W first as well. So James Webb will look at specific tiny little targets out in space, deep in space, and W first will do a big survey. So they're complementary, and that they may even W first will probably be a big help to JWST. I don't know if the other way around, but like you know, well, things like JWST, for example, when you see a planet, you discover a planet with tests or whatever, JWST can go whip over there and learn a lot about that system. Well, of course, one other thing that you like having a telescope in space for is the spectra are not polluted by the atmosphere. So now the astronomers have a really good handle on what the atmosphere does to spectrum, but it's still a hassle for them. So there's a the next one will probably be very similar to JWST in terms of, but it'll be bigger. And how do you get it bigger? Well, they're working on that. But it's because what you'd like to be able to do is you'd like to be able to see developing solar systems and planets further away, more sensitive.
Paul, when you get the chance, check YouTube messages.
YouTube messages.
Question.
Oh, I don't even have a YouTube up.
Let me see if I can get it for you.
He says.
You got it? Nick got it.
2.725K. It will cool down over time. So apparently there is a new project underway to make a radio telescope on the far side of Luna's craters. Yes, I was going to mention that because it's so interesting.
Well, I wouldn't say there's a project underway. There is a study underway, which is very different from a project. Yeah, nobody really knows how to do it yet, because we haven't really done that much lunar ground operations. We don't really know how to do those. Maybe in a few years we'll start figuring that out. But I think what you don't do is you don't say, oh, okay, we'll just figure it out. We'll just do a whole lot of modeling and simulation and then figure it out from there. What you do is you say, well, here's roughly how we'll approach it. And then you do a small pilot project and then on the moon. And then you say, oh, well, okay, here's all the mistakes we made and all the things we didn't understand. And then, develop from there. But, I think a radio telescope on the lunar far side is, incredibly promising.
Yeah, I saw a tweet this evening. I mean, earlier on today, I think, was about placing a telescope in a crater.
Yeah, a radio telescope. Yeah, well, similar to what the Chinese have done with FAST, right? Which is this 500-meter. I think there's some kind of bowl.
Spherical aperture.
Yeah.
It's set in a natural crater, just like Arecibo.
Right.
Yeah,
I was particularly fascinated by this project because I was just a year or two, I was corresponding with a friend about exactly this engineering challenge. How could you get a device to assemble a radio telescope in a crater on the far side of the moon?
The moon. Yeah.
Well, the far side's not a big challenge, but just the fact that it's on the moon with all that dust kicking up and
right.
The fact that we don't have any experience really in building things on the moon. Now, just go and do some less ambitious projects first, and learn the art of building things on the moon, and then should be able to figure it out. It's probably, it might be as simple as simply coating the inside of pick a nice crater that's not too badly beat up, and just coat it with a thin coat of aluminum, and just deal with the geometric imperfections. Then we might be able to do that. And it's what they did with Arecibo was done actually with a very modest budget. So, going back even before that to the Big Ear in Ohio in the late 50s. Oh, Chiro's sharing something with us. Oh, yeah.
Here it is. Here's the picture.
This is what they posted.
A wire mesh.
I think there was funding. I think that there was some funding allocated by NASA.
It's a study.
For a study.
Nothing's going to get built yet.
Right.
The study should be fun. I think I and lots of other people have been very enthusiastic for a long time about a radio telescope on the far side. An optical telescope is harder, so we should probably start with the radio. A mesh sounds like actually a pretty good idea.
Well, even something as straightforward as something the size of the James Webb Space Telescope, that it's already built, and then you land it on the far side of the moon, and then you open it up. Even that would be a very interesting instrument because of the EM silence on the far side of the moon.
Well, for radio, yes. For infrared, you don't really need it because assuming the sun shield works on James Webb.
Right.
You've got that solved. The problem with anything optical on the moon is all the dust. We don't really understand how to deal with the dust yet. And
well, like you said, we've got no experience constructing stuff there. So
not only that, no experience operating equipment for more than a few days. So, it's now the Chinese have some experience operating things over multiple day-night cycles, but they've got a rover down there. But
the only thing I can think of is they could perhaps do some simulations on Earth.
Yeah, the simulations are
similar material.
We have to be humble about our simulation capability. It's pretty good, but we're not gonna really nail all the dirty physics of the environment.
Yeah.
The problem,
right. Instead of simulation, we need boots on the ground.
Yeah, or robots on the ground.
With Mars, they do simulation with the rovers, but.
Yeah, we kind of with the Mars, I think we kind of did it right. We sent that little Pathfinder rover out there, and sort of did a proof of concept and said, yeah, okay, we can do this, and then Opportunity and Spirit came along, and they were very conservatively built, but they didn't have very ambitious capabilities, right? And they both survived a lot longer than they should have. And then, and the thing is about the Mars environment, it's not as cold at night as it is on the moon, and you don't have all this. You have dust, but the dust is because there is an atmosphere. The dust is kind of manageable, and also the atmosphere seems to be involved in cleaning the dust off the solar panels. I don't know. But on the moon, you have to deal with this very long night, where it just gets incredibly cold, and so that has to be dealt. You have to deal with the lunar dust, which is because there's no air. It could be statically charged and just be floating in the space, and it.
So you're saying the conditions would be relatively hard to duplicate here on Earth in a laboratory?
Yeah, they would be hard. Yeah. I think the way to do it is to go to the near side and send some robots out to build something simple, like a tunnel or something, or a structure of some kind, and just learn how to do it. One thing they're talking about would be a landing pad, right? Because when you land a lander on the moon, you kick up all this dust. Some of it's moving so fast it goes in orbit around the moon.
Code Rock was just writing on YouTube comments. He's saying coding the lunar surface might be necessary just for landing large vehicles, so that is being looked at.
Yeah, well, the first one you land is going to get really dirty. It's going to send dust all over the place. So if you could create a robot that could build a landing pad by somehow solidifying the dust into the regolith into some kind of flat pad, that would be a massive accomplishment, because then you could land cleanly, so because right now the situation is if you have a landing location, you're going to have to get your equipment a long way away from there, because it's the next one that lands is going to scatter dust all over the place. Because we're talking, the ejection velocity we're talking about is about 3,000 meters per second. So this exhaust gases hit it's like 3 times the speed of a rifle bullet, and dust just goes flying everywhere. It wasn't a problem for Apollo because they were not going to reuse the landing site. They landed, and then there was a mess, but it was a mess on the moon, right? It wasn't. Yeah. And then they got their stuff out, but if they had tried to land at the same site again, they would have had, they would have made a mess all over the place. Let me see. I want to see what I can do. Let me see. Since this is supposed to be a technical rehearsal, I'm going to try to bring up. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll just use my phone. Why didn't I use my phone? Let's see. I got YouTube on my phone. Let's see. Now, what is the...
Rocky's watching us, so he's asking.
Okay. Now I have to figure out how to get this on my phone. See. No, that wasn't the right way. Okay.
You have a single monitor, Paul?
I've got another monitor over here, but what the heck? That's what I'll do.
Oh, you could open the browser. I don't know your setup, I can.
It's a Thunderbolt monitor, so it's really easy to switch it.
I
just have to. It's one of these Mac only monitors. But it's made by LG. Hold on. All right, let's see what happens here when I do this live. Oh, worked. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Chrome. No, not Chrome. Chrome's too busy. Firefox over there in the other monitor. And let's see. The problem is my mic is kind of a weird spot. I'm going to get the YouTube. I just already put I got to go to YouTube. All right.
On the right hand, if you got YouTube up, make sure on the right hand side there's something says show chat, because he's writing.
Oh yeah, I will.
Because otherwise you're not going to see.
I'm gonna have to turn off the audio too, because it's going to be crazy.
Yes. Mute the YouTube audio, because that's what I did. Otherwise,
Okay. I can see the chat. I see Rock Howard.
You got him. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see it. Although it's frozen right now. Why is it frozen? Oh, I haven't hit play. There you go. All right. Well, that's working pretty well. I don't know who that ugly guy in the upper right-hand corner is, but well, I haven't had a haircut in like a long time. Because just when this lockdown hit, I was gonna go get a haircut. There we go. So I have, I have quite this,
Well, at least you got some there. I am nothing. So.
Well, I kind of envy you. I'd be easier.
Well, I do have hair. I do have hair, but I shave basically.
I
got baldness, lots of baldness.
My son has got enough hair for everybody.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And we were talking about haircuts before the lockdown, and now it's not on the table. I was saying, well, you want that VR, maybe you should get your hair cut a little bit. Just trim it. No. Okay, so it looks like there's a significant, the delay is, I'd say 30, 40 seconds.
Yeah, I'd say so. Give
yeah, it's, okay, well, we've gone about half an hour past what I intended, but it's been fun.
Yeah, I should probably bail too. And
well, I'm going to try to get,
actual...
I want to get Adam Smith in on one of these pubs. Now, when we have him next week, it's going to be really late for him. So we might do one that'd be more like a Saturday afternoon. That would be suitable for people in Europe. I think Daniela might want to participate as well.
How's your show schedule looking like now? You have any kind of special guests lined up in the near future?
I have a couple of people that I need to schedule, and we'll be doing that very soon. And about once a month, Daniela surprises me with one of her ideas, which they all turned out to be pretty good ideas, but it's people I never would have thought of. One other time, I just put out a tweet and I said, if you think you should be on the show, let me know. And Stella Kafka tweeted back, said, yeah, I should be on the show.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I said, okay, well, all right, Stella, let's get you on the show. And so that's how that happened. And that happened pretty fast. The last one was somebody I actually contacted, the guy who wrote Extraterrestrials, Wade Roush. I had not read the book when I asked him on the show. I just said, if you're writing a book titled Extraterrestrials, you should be on the show. We'll talk about it. And we'll see, because it was MIT Press, so I know he wasn't like some crank. He's a very seasoned science and tech writer, has a PhD in history of science or philosophy of science. So he's it turned out, he was a very, I pre-ordered it, and I just got it yesterday. I don't know why they went with the gray alien mythology there for extra, but
it's the most iconic. It's the most iconic.
I don't think that was his call. I think that was somebody at MIT Press said, "Okay, let's put the alien from the mythosphere on there," and but it's actually it's a very sane book. None of it. I think to people like you that know a lot of this literature, it won't be too much surprising. It is really up to date though, and I would say it cuts off like mid 2019. So it's in terms, and it goes into astrobiology and the Fermi paradox and all that stuff. So it's the usual sort of stuff that we talk about on the podcast all the time. And so it was good to have him on, and very affable guy and good conversation. And but these things happen like that sometimes. I just see a book or some other thing pop up and I say, oh, I'll talk to that guy. Now what I want to do, and I'm not there yet because I haven't retired yet. I don't have time to do a deep read of all the papers that are coming out. I wish I did. For example, Jason Wright. I've never had Jason Wright on the show. I really feel like I should, probably, but I think I should have him like 5 or 6 times because
he would be an excellent guest.
He's written so many interesting papers on different topics that are germane to the WOW signal, and he also is. I've had his students on.
Wow.
but not him. So, well, one student of his, Sophia Sheikh, who did some interesting work. But I really feel like I should have him on. I think he'd be willing to do it. I just haven't asked him because I'm overwhelmed by all the stuff he's written. I can't catch up to it. He wrote a lot of stuff on Tabby Star. He wrote a lot of stuff on SETI, and even what I call SETA, which is Search for Extraterrestrial Artifacts, that is physical objects. He's written on that. He's written on a lot of things, and so I could have him on 5 or 6 times. I just got to read all his papers. I feel like I have to read them, and not just glance at them. I have to really dig in, and so I can do that a few times a year, And now what Daniela does, she goes out and makes all these friends who have all these interesting things going on, and so we had what's her name on Paula Castano recently. Now Paula is a sociologist, but she has embedded herself with scientists. She's doing ethnographies of scientific teams, and so I thought it was Daniela's idea to have her on the show, but I said, well, I'm going to go with this, see how it leads, and I thought it actually came out pretty well.
Interesting.
So I was a little skeptical, but that it would be interesting, but it was fine. And same thing with Julia de Marinas, who's doing a lot of interesting work. And it was my idea to have Beatriz Villarreal back on to talk about her work. And also Daniel Oberhaus's book came out, Extraterrestrial Languages. I said, well, okay, if I contact him and ask him to be on the show, I'll get a PDF of the book before it comes out. I wanted to see what it was about.
I have a question, Paul. Obviously, I'm not asking you to name names, but based on your experience, have you had have you had refusals? Have you ever had refusals?
Oh yeah.
From people that just plain say, no, I'm not going to.
Yeah, not many, but I've had either refusals or people who kind of like deflected. Sometimes just no response at all. Which I think is basically a refusal.
Right. Yeah.
It's a pocket veto.
Yeah, exactly. But it's actually the success rate is pretty high. I would say 90%. Someone will deflect you to a future date, and they'll say, "Well, I can't do it now, but I can do it." In 3 months, and you say, well, okay, in 3 months I'll call you up again. We'll do it. But it's amazing. There's this high correlation between people whose work I find interesting and people who are willing to talk about their work in the public without being paid for it. So,
have you ever had anybody asking you your audience before saying yes?
Yes,
or no?
I have.
That's right.
But that didn't stop them coming on the show. Just
okay.
there are people who want to know how many downloads I get. Yeah.
That's what I meant. That's what
But we are not, anywhere near the top tier. Fact,
you don't have the quantity, Paul, but you have the quality. That's sure.
Right. That's what I tell my audience. My audience are the kind of people who will buy your damn book.
Right. That's it.
They'll read your paper. They're the people that want to know. It's not just warm bodies, and
you get people on the show, like people of the caliber of Nick, for instance. What more can you ask for? Daniela and Nick, for instance, those are
You know,
Nick in particular.
the most downloads I've ever had in a show is
Thank
less.
you, Chero.
But you know what? The most downloads I ever had was episode 5. Way back in 2013.
The Wow Signal podcast.
No, it was
season 1, episode 5.
Yeah, it was about Bracewell probes, and what I decided to do was play a lot of music, and then talk about Bracewell probes in between the songs, just for fun, just to try something different.
I think I listened to that one.
and it was mostly scripted,
right?
And I read large excerpts from Bracewell's paper, so because Bracewell's paper, I think, is even still behind a paywall right now, but it was back then, certainly, even though it came out in 1960. Nature had it behind their paywall. Because I work,
a lot of classic papers are behind paywalls, but then if you search the internet, you'll often find them on ResearchGate or other places like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Nowadays.
But Nature is pretty aggressive about policing their copyrights, so I couldn't find it. But because I work for NASA, I could get it through the NASA library.
Or you could just become an outlaw like me and get whatever content you want by using illegal sources.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I know I don't. I would never do that.
I don't do that, but
never.
There's ways.
That's basically
there are ways.
A cannibal and eating your own children. I know. I'm beyond saving.
That's right. Well, wait for that knock on your door at 3 a.m., Nick. You just admitted it. I for that reason, because I knew it was hard for people to find the paper, I read significant chunks of the paper as part of the podcast. So basically, Bracewell wrote 30% of the text on that paper, on that podcast, and that was my biggest downloads. I don't know why. Maybe because I played so much music.
The Unseen podcast, there were some episodes that got quite a few downloads.
Yeah, there were, but we never got. I think we never got over 2,000.
We never went viral.
No, which was never an objective, and I thought, well, look, this is more about. This is not really about trying to make a living at podcasting or selling advertising or anything like that. It's just we're going to have these conversations. Anyone who wants to listen in can. And sometimes the conversations were good. Sometimes they were mediocre,
to say the least.
I'd go in there and I go, well, who's really ready to talk about this topic? Well, not. We were all hoping you were. Well, I'm not as ready as I'd like to be, and
I don't think that we did a poor job. I mean, at least those few episodes that I was on myself, many of the other ones,
Well, we did all right. I think on most episodes, we
I think so.
And the idea was to let the conversation wander around and
right.
go into that was fine. I didn't mind that. In the future, I think I'm not going to do that so much, but. If you say we're going to let the conversation go off on tangents, then when you go out on a tangent, you got to embrace that. But or if you say, but what I tried to enforce and failed on the Unseen podcast was we're going to have a robust discussion of the topic before we go on air, and probably that happened maybe 30% of the time at best. So and the idea was everybody has to know, okay, what facts do I need to know? What should I read before I go on the air? What should I be informed about? And, let's face it, when people aren't getting paid, and people have other things they have to do in their lives, it's just unlikely. So, um, you know,
when Shapley and Curtis had their great debate over cosmology in 1920, they actually rode the same train to go to the venue for the conference, and they didn't talk about anything. So their debate would be fresh when they got in front of the audience.
It's interesting.
Well, but they were both very well informed about their views.
They were. They both had definite things to contribute and
Yeah.
definite points of view that were different from each other.
Yeah,
That's true. We're not all Harlow Shapley.
There was yeah, those were interesting times, certainly, at least in astronomy.
Well, we've had a series of interesting times. If you think of how it was completely unknown at that time of whether the Milky Way was the only galaxy of well, it was no evidence to decide at that time. And then I remember when I was a kid, there was no evidence to determine what active galactic nuclei were, which quasars. They knew it was a really bright source, but nobody knew that was streaming a black hole spewing out superheated gases from its accretion disk. And now we don't know what the mechanisms are behind Tabby's star and Shabolsky's star. So there still are great cosmological mysteries out there.
Yeah, well, a lot of that's well, when you have something like say gamma ray bursts, they get a lot of attention and a lot of even funding.
Fast radio bursts?
No, gamma ray bursts.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying also fast radio bursts.
Well, they did. Yeah, those have done pretty well in terms of getting telescope time.
And we're getting more data on them now. We know some repeating sources and we know some origins.
Yeah, well, FRBs are doing well in terms of the amount of community attention they get and the amount of telescope time they get. The other things like Tabby Star, couldn't even get Hubble time. So, there's.
You think it's a giggle factor or something else?
No, it's not that. It was more that to get time on these premium resources, you have to have a high chance of success, of coming home with something.
It in the act.
Yeah, I talked to Brad Schaefer about that. Now, Schaefer has, he's worked on Tabby Star. He's also worked on Nobel Prize winning stuff. He's very familiar with sort of the upper echelons of astronomy, and the committees that determine who gets Hubble time, who gets James Webb Space Telescope time, so forth. They're looking for they're looking for low risk stuff. They don't want to say they don't like fishing expeditions. They don't want. Now, there are people who are saying, we should dedicate X% of our time to, more prospecting. Yeah, to just things that are not necessarily likely to turn up a result, but
there's another way that they could approach that. I learned a term a few months ago that I just love: adversarial research. So you can have a mainstream scientific research program, and you can just take somebody who's a curmudgeon and says no, and just let them try to disprove a hypothesis instead of looking only to confirming hypotheses that are pretty mainstream.
Right. Well, I mean, the problem is that most of these curmudgeons have no damn idea what observation they need to make to disconfirm.
Well, some of them do. Yeah, that might be true, but some of them have a very clear research program.
Right. That's what I was going to say. They would have to have a certain amount of scientific viability to begin with, though, right? I mean, you cannot just try.
You're not giving the money to cranks, but you're giving the money because a lot of scientific research programs make it get funding and make it into the public eye because they're sexy. And adversarial research is the way to counter sexy fads of going after stuff that sounds great, but if a simple observation that can only be conducted by a specialized instrument can provide the definitive disconfirmation of a sexy hypothesis, that's very valuable science.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there is some support for that now. I mean, because you can couch it as I'm out to test the theory, but if there's a test, then there has to be at least one possible outcome that would disconfirm. And but what's really hard to do is getting money for duplication.
Yeah.
Or for something that you expect to have a negative result.
Like SETI.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're gonna SETI. You know that most of your results are gonna, historically anyway, are gonna come out negative, and that's the nature of the experiment. And so you have to get somebody like Paul Allen to give you millions of dollars to do that, because you're not going to get it. You're going to make it happen through the National Science Foundation or something like that, because it's just not there. But
yeah, Jason Wright, whom you were extolling earlier, has been pushing really hard to have real government money go into SETI research by trying to integrate SETI into the astrobiology program at NASA.
Right.
So
and
he
also
was behind authoring a whole bunch of papers for the 2020 survey to direct the research for the next 10
he did.
And the decadal survey.
Those are some of the papers that I wanted to talk to him about, but I got overwhelmed. But some
of them are quite short, though.
Yeah, they are. Because that was a white paper, meant to be a white paper, not really a science paper, just
exactly
supporting a particular research program. At the square kilometer array, there will be what they call the commensal research. That is, the square kilometer array can form multiple beams, and it's the most sophisticated space radio telescope ever built. And so wherever they're pointing to do, say, look at a galaxy or something, you can also have a secondary target and just take data sort of for free while they're looking at some low risk science target, like a galaxy or something, quasar. Just off to the right of that is a star that you might want to take data on. And so there are people that for some years now have been looking at doing that on the square kilometer array, which over the next few years is going to come online. So now that's a smart way to handle it. Another smart way to handle it is data mining, which is looking at data that's already there or is coming down the pipe, and just looking at because some of these astronomy surveys generate huge amounts of data, and not all of it gets analyzed for every possible interpretation. They'll catalog it, but they won't. You have millions and millions of sources. You can't investigate every one of them. And for example, the Gaia mission has more than 1 billion sources that it looks at. It doesn't. They have data for all those sources, but there's not a professional astronomer who's looked at every source and said what might be peculiar about this one. No. Anyway, guys, gosh, it's 11 o'clock.
Yeah,
it's late.
I was going to be.
Well, 9 o'clock out. It's getting dark out in Portland. I can see that.
Yes, it is. It is. There's a little bit of light left in the sky, but it is getting dark now.
Yeah. Sure. So I'm gonna
8:02 p.m. here.
Anyway, this looked like it worked pretty well. So I'm encouraged.
Anybody be willing to do any kind of predictions, dangerous coronavirus ending pandemic predictions? Any of you guys?
You know what? I told myself that purely as a heuristic. Now, I'm not an epidemiologist. when we start to see as many people recovered as case as well, sorry, half the cases reported are people have recovered, then that's light at the end of the tunnel. It's not the end of the tunnel, but it's light at the end of the tunnel. But
we already know it's not a big killer. The only thing is how much economic damage is going to be done by shutting down businesses.
Well,
how many personal bankruptcies, and how many business failures are we going to tolerate?
Oh, there'll be a lot of those. This is an economy smasher if I've ever seen one. But but the thing is, yeah. Well, I mean, right now it looks like the death rate's coming in like 2%, 3% worldwide.
Yeah, less than that. And it depends on how you run the numbers, but that gets very complicated.
Well, it does depend on it. Well, we don't have a good population-wide estimate.
No.
We don't
real
have
number of cases.
Random sampling.
Yeah, we don't have it nearly.
Well,
enough,
they did that in a small area in Colorado, which is not representing the whole country, but they were getting roughly 1% of the population tested positive, and there was some room for interpretation there. It could be as high as 2%, and
right,
which suggests that right now there's something like 7 million people infected in the U.S. alone. But we don't know how long it takes for for all those cases to turn into ICU cases, which is really the big problem.
But they don't. The vast majority of people who actually get it aren't in the ICU. It's only the people with comorbidities of emphysema, multiple organ failure.
Well, no, there's some very healthy people with no comorbidities who've died from it.
But those are extremely rare. The number of people who don't have comorbidids who die from getting it is way less than 1%. It's tiny. And the number of people from 0 to 14 who die from it is also tiny. But the media take they'll take one exceptional case and then they'll just hammer it home and then just feed this panic like they were making money from it. You'd almost think that they were getting advertising revenue from feeding the fear.
Well,
there's an extremely.
They are, but the thing is, my sister's a physician in Nashville. She's seeing a lot of cases. She's also dealing with the usual stuff that they get every day. But the ICU capacity is getting overwhelmed in a lot of cities, and that's really the big problem. And then people who have just normal issues like heart attacks can't get medical care, the acute care that they need,
because the ICU is filled. Right.
Yeah, and in New York, it's been really bad. No. But in fact, New York has something like half the cases in the United States. Yeah. Nobody can explain why that is. But
actually, there are some things that are known, but they're not widely talked about. Some Orthodox Jews have been holding large parties and have been unwilling to curtail them. On the one hand, on the other hand, there's a high African American population, and the African American population is been shown to be disproportionately affected by it.
That's true, but
and all epidemics have hotspots, just like.
But it's just even the people who are not going to the hospital, people are just testing positive. Now, but part of it is a testing bias. There may be more testing in some areas than others. And
there's definitely more testing, and there's some countries only allow testing upon suspicion of actually having it, which of course is skew the testing results to as though they were a much higher percentage of it represented in the population than in fact is the case.
That's how it is in my county. If I get symptoms, and I've been through all this contingency planning because I'm over 60 and I'm a risky population. I'm male. if I get symptoms, I have to call a doctor. The doctor will then fill out a form, and I can make an appointment to get tested. I cannot get tested just by going to the drive-through testing place. So you have to have an appointment. And there is a drive-through testing place about 5 miles from my house. But, and if I get symptoms, that's what I'm going to do. But, it's really hard to keep your teenagers from going out and breaking curfew. But,
well, I got news for you, Paul. You're going to live. You're going to see through this epidemic.
Well, I am actually. I mean, the risk is not zero for me.
No, the risk isn't zero for anybody. But that's illusory. The idea that there could be zero risk, even for young, healthy people.
Well, I mean, it's significant.
You cannot have a public health. You cannot have a public health policy based on the idea of zero risk. That's idiotic.
Well, I know, but I mean, when I say not zero, I mean, it's high.
Non-trivial. What you're saying is you have a non-trivial risk.
Yes.
That's probably fair. But if you're over 70, your non-trivial risk would be far, far higher.
Yeah.
90% of the people who died in Italy were over 70. And of those, most were over 80 and many were over 90 because Italy has a very old population.
Yes.
Right. Well, we're very
There's
worried
a demographic bias.
That's why my father-in-law, who's 92, has got, and my stepmom, who's 87, need to be isolated. I'm not really isolated, but because I live in a house with 4 people, and some of the people go outside from time to time. And you can't always be sure where they're headed.
Right. Well,
this is lethality by age in just for the country of Italy as of April 9. I don't know if you can see that.
My age group is 9%.
Yeah, that's Italy, of course, right?
Well, I mean, I don't smoke, which helps probably a little bit, but still, I mean.
And you don't have multiple organ failure. You're not morbidly obese, so
I'm pretty heavy guy.
Yeah, but you're not morbidly obese.
No, but I mean, I've been north of 300 pounds a couple times in my life, but I'm fit at 240. So, but still, 60 to 69, that's my age group.
9%, presumably 9% of known cases
of testing for those who test positive.
That testing, as we talked about, that testing is going to be strongly biased towards people who have. They're not going to be doing a lot of testing in areas with low prevalence of the virus.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
Ciro, are these from across Italy, or just from the Milan, or just from?
No, this is across Italy. This particular this particular chart. This is a website that's from Italian, pretty widespread Italian newspaper.
Recoverati are people who have recovered, I guess.
Isolated.
Recoverati doesn't mean that. Recoverati means people that are in the hospital, and terapia intensiva means ICU. So the dark red represents people that are in ICU and criticals, right? And then recoverati means people that are in the hospital, period. And then isolamento domiciliare means people that are quarantined, that have symptoms that they've been positive, right? Tested positive. Okay. But they are at home. They're not in a hospital.
Oh, okay.
So as you can see, this is starting to look more and more like a bell curve, which obviously this is.
Yeah. The thing is, you could get a secondary outbreak if people stop isolating.
But they reached the peak already over there in Italy. This is a logarithmic scale, right? The actual scale. These are the provinces that are more affected. The one with the worst, with the highest number of cases. The ones represented here, and you can see that
Milan is pretty bad, huh?
Yes. And Rome is right at the bottom. It's amazing.
Right. Yeah. So the north has been completely, affected very badly. you know.
Every pandemic has hotspots. Wuhan, Milan, New York, those are hotspots.
Right. And this one is a good one too. This is the Financial Times. You guys should. Oh, I'm sorry. I, I have to change screen. But the one from the Financial Times is very interesting as well, because this one is updated also on a daily basis. And let me show you this one real quick, because this is nice. I like this one. I got it. I got one. My tabs. I always looking at this one. This is the Financial Times. But what you can see, this one is in English, of course, so you can read it for yourself. But it's very interesting kind of stats they show here as well. This is the death rates. You see Italy has peaked already, is on the downwards. Um, unlike the UK and the US.
This is total deaths or
This
deaths
is
per
yeah.
day.
No, deaths per day.
Okay.
These are the daily counts.
Wow.
These are the daily counts.
So the UK is really bad because they have like 1/5 the population of the United States. Yeah, they're at 700.
So you can see here the curves from a number of countries, what they're doing right now, as of today. And then this one is the actual, this is the death toll, right? I guess this is the total death toll. You can see this is the region of Lombardy, which was the hardest hit in Italy,
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth. And then they got this one, which is some nice spreads they're showing here. It's a little bit different type of chart, but they also have the actual cases. This is the I think this is the totals, or is this the daily? This is the total, isn't it? Yeah, I think this must be is the total.
Daily confirmed cases.
The daily ones. Okay.
7-day
daily.
rolling average by number of days since 30 daily cases.
Right. Yep. So, so you can see this one is pretty, self-explanatory, I suppose. But this is a good one. The Financial Times one is, I like this one a lot. They got this one, which is extremely fascinating, from the Institute of Health from the University of Washington. This one is pretty good because you can actually see the bed incidents and the predicted number of beds and ICU that are anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can break this down really nicely, because you can see from the United States standpoint, you can see the margin of errors, and you can see you can go state by state, and then you can go to other countries, etc., and this graph shows that the peak, in the United States, we might be there now as far as the needs for beds. Of course, then if you go to the states, you're going to notice some variability state by state, but in general, countrywide, we should be at the peak now, according to this one.
The problem is those localized spikes that are really bad. You can't just move people from Maine to Arizona,
But you can't lose ventilators. The state of Oregon sent something like 140 ventilators.
Well, but I saw something today that 80% of the people in New York that they put on ventilators die. So
I've heard that you had to be put in a ventilator. Your prospects are not good.
Right. And I also read
that if you're intubated, there are breathing machines they can put you on that are not full of ventilators. But
I was reading a lot of people probably don't need to be on ventilators. They've been put on ventilators. They should not be on ventilators. That's another story that I was reading somewhere.
Well, it can make the immune reaction worse. That's exactly. I mean, what kills you is the immune reaction, as I understand it. Your lungs fill with fluid and they can't get it out. And
you die by suffocation by all intents and purposes.
But my concern is, everywhere I've heard about in the U.S. is kind of locked down enough that there ought to be a significant reduction in the spread of the disease. If we come out too soon from that, the spread could, and then hospitals everywhere could get overwhelmed.
That's one of the sticky points of the debate. Which evil? Do you want to go ahead and if you think that opening up, I guess to Nick's point, we don't want to go ahead and have the cure be worse than the disease, right? As many said. But at
Well,
the same time, what if we open up too soon and then we're going to end up with this wave, worse wave than we were in now? That's the danger, I guess. I don't know.
well,
I don't
yeah.
know.
I mean, you could have an echo, uh, until there's a vaccine that's really effective, uh, which is not a slam dunk. I mean, look, think of how long they're working on an HIV vaccine.
Right, but I mean, even if there's no vaccine, I would think and hope anyway that they could kind of refine what they're working on right now, which is not a cure, right?
Treatment.
But at least some sort of yeah. I mean, therapies that minimize the symptoms, that can take people out of ICU, right, and make the symptoms.
Yeah.
Right.
People who are at high risk can be, quarantined at home. People can bring them food and make sure that they're okay. There's enough people in the world to make sure that happens. But the longer you have these massive shutdowns, I mean, no modern industrialized economy can survive very long with an unemployment rate of 30 to 40%. That's ruinous. There are going to be people who there's a lot of people living on the edge who will never recover from going a month or two without income.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, they'll still be alive, but their lives will be destroyed because they'll never have stable housing again. So those are real costs,
Mm-hmm.
keeping things shut down. And there's such simple things that could be done, like let restaurants reopen, but say you have to have the number of tables you have on the floor. Make sure everybody washes their hands, brings their own towel with them. Lecture people for touching their face in public, so to remind them. It's so simple. If you keep the vulnerable people away from most social interaction, reduce the density of public spaces but don't close them, and keep working on therapies that can address things, then you don't have to shut the economy down.
Well, I mean, therapy's maybe a long-term answer. Look what has happened with HIV. Almost nobody's dying of AIDS now, right? But they still get infected, but there are effective ways to treat it. And AIDS is a much worse virus. I mean, HIV used to be a death sentence, and not anymore. And it's not just because they all died off.
I need to bill probably right about now.
Yeah, it is 11:20 here on the East Coast.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think we've had a successful technical rehearsal. So I'm ready for next week's pub and then some live stuff coming up. I just have to get on the ball and figure out what that next live thing's going to be. It's probably not going to fall in my lap like it did with Stella Kafka. It's going to be something that we'll have to actually, a topic we'll have to put out there. I have some ideas. And by the way, I'm thinking of doing like a night, almost a daily video series, but right now, I don't know how to make it happen, but a little more self-discipline and time management, I might be able to do it. So anyway, thanks for showing up, guys. Been fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was.
I'm gonna
See you guys.
I'm gonna end the meeting now. I'm gonna end streaming. I'm gonna see if my